Serious, how could we actually save the Earth? The Earth will be fine. It's the current species that inhabit it that are in danger. Humans are a blip on the timeline of the Earth. This was essentially George Carlin's response to Earth Day and other human-focused fanfare. Well done. The Earth doesn't need saving. It's going to be just fine once we're all dead. There need to be an X price for carbon capture technology, then juicy government contracts for people to operate that technology. Once solving a crisis becomes profitable, someone will find a way to resolve it. The one issue is that carbon capture technology, while helpful, is kind of like putting band-aid on the problem. It helps for the short term, but in the long run we still need to fix a ton. Yeah, so much more right than you will ever know, and it's a shame. Reducing animal product consumption plus electric cars plus PPL deciding to only have 2 or less kids. Electric cars would only help if the method of generating electricity is something other than burning fossil fuels. They still help, since fossil fuel plants are much more efficient than car engines, and most countries at least get some percentage of their electricity from renewables or nuclear. Depends on the environmental cost of building these cars. In addition, you can't make anything without wasting some energy. Putting higher penalties on littering pollution laws. We have trillions of trees and tons of paper. Cutting down on plastic for some years will help more than you might think. If it were a couple decades ago, yeah, but now we need more drastic measures. That's probably true, but humans care so much more about efficiency than their planet. Unfortunately, you're right. I think global genocide is probably the only answer. Save the other species from us at the very least. Unfortunately, the production of paper requires a lot of energy and thus emits quite some CO2, which is also harmful for the environment. It is a better alternative than plastic, that's for sure. But trying to avoid one-use products altogether and use reusable ones instead is the best way to help the environment. Sadly, stop having kids primarily, then stop burning coal, nearly stop burning gasoline, and planting billions of trees without a serious drop in birth rates, and getting trees to take in all that CO2. Any other measure will only delay the inevitable. Deciding to not have kids is the best thing the average human can do for the environment, besides becoming a mass murderer. But that's more because individual humans have such little impact on the entire environment. If we want to save Earth, we don't need to teach everyone to recycle and not litter. Sure, that helps, and everyone should do it. But even if we all did it, it would still pale in comparison to changing what businesses and governments do. It's also taboo to tell people to not have kids. It's protected like a human right. Make as many products without plastic as possible, especially single-use plastics, and get rid of designed obsolescence. To explain my statement, I didn't mean that we should produce more products. I meant that we should change the materials used in products away from plastics. We can make biodegradable plastic out of corn now. I don't know why it's not a thing yet. Is there anything corn can't do? Problem is probably the fact that you have to get the corn from somewhere. Ah yes, what 3D printers use composes into CO2, water and methane in at most 2 years when exposed to air. Good stuff. Pretty cheap too. Consume. 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 As long as it's not plastic, you're actually saving the Earth. Just 100 companies are responsible for 71% of emissions, so maybe doing something about them would be a good start. Source: nah, don't you be worrying about that. Instead you should feel personally responsible and worry about sorting your garbage more than anything else. Also make sure to spend a lot of time berating people that don't live as green as you do, so we are sure that the narrative is spread as effectively as possible. Whatever you do, do not spend that time and energy waging war on the main perpetrators and the politicians that protect them. They need to do how they do. Think of the duo orbs. No, it's all on you. Now go look at your special light bulb and think about what a horrible person you are. Good little citizen. The biggest problem is that there's 7,000,000,000 humans on Earth, and they need to collaborate. All of us have to work together, but that's extremely difficult. For example, I remember when I was in university in Hamburg, We had to do a project in a group of 3 people. One guy did absolutely nothing, and another dude was doing something, but not too much. I repeat, a group of 3 people. Now imagine 7.7 billion people giving to work total. So realistically, mass genocide would solve the problem? If there's one thing we can work together on very well, it's killing each other. Well, yes, but actually, no. You just explained the part of socialism that college kids ignore when advocating for it. If there's one surefire way to get humans to do something, it's to make it the most profitable course of action. That may include rewarding corporations with tax breaks, rather than punishing them with fines, if they meet certain environmental quotas. Going vegan, adopting children, rather than reproducing, buying foods in bulk rather than packaging, make your own hygiene products, and reuse containers, use metal straws or any reusable material, really buy less things, quit fast fashion, the list goes on. Penalize corporations. It's pretty much all their fault, and you taking an hour-long shower has done nothing compared to what they did in the first minute of your hour-long shower. Why do you think corporations do what they do? The carbon pollution they produce is what we consume. You're framing it as a rhyme, only one person, and my impact is nil compared to these large, powerful, evil corporations. While that is true, looking at both outputs, you miss the big picture. We can't all take our long showers and frantically destroy that commons we live in. Penalizing corporations across the board will just encourage them to go overseas to countries with lesser environmental protections. And since the world is a fragmented, messy place both geopolitically and physically, shipping alone might bring higher emissions. If you want real change, there must be an incentive for these companies to change. The best thing an individual, particularly Americans, can do for the environment is to not have children, or to adopt one instead. To add to that, eating less meat is very carbon efficient, and associated with lower rates of heart disease and cancer. A trend I've seen is meatless Mondays, so you don't have to give it up altogether. Pretty sure Catholics were doing meatless Fridays since they became a thing. The racist idiot aside, countries like China and India are really the ones that need the advice to stop populating. Humanity is prone to repetition. As long as humanity exists, we will continue to fail. The planet, on the other hand, will come back, with or without us. Earth has had mass extinctions before, and it will again. Extinction is a part of life and necessary for the evolution of all things. Basically, do your best to keep the world healthy, but don't act surprised when we hit our tipping point, only to die slowly and painfully, despite our best efforts. Or quickly if we nuke ourselves to oblivion. Nihilism in the face of an existential threat sure is a great excuse to ignore the problem. Climate change isn't impossible to fix at this point, and talking like the extinction of mankind is inevitable only hurts the effort to make that not happen. Nuclear power. It produces extremely high energy yields while not producing any carbon emissions. A single kilogram of uranium-235 produces 2 to 3 million times more energy than a kilogram of coal. Accidents like Chernobyl scare people away from nuclear power, but safety regulations have gone way up since then. If we put more research into the development of nuclear technology, we can make sure it's a safe and reliable source of clean energy. At least temporarily, until we can get more solar and wind. Vote. Making changes to your own lifestyle and encouraging others to do the same is amazing and definitely makes a difference. But if you want to make even bigger changes, then you need to put someone in place who can enforce the kind of climate change bills that we are desperately in need of. Nuclear power. Also, new gen stuff like thorium molten salt reactors have very low CO2 emissions. Wind, water and solar are great and all, but they cannot keep up with demand. People won't upvote answers that suggest they actually have to change. But here's a good answer. Go vegan. This is sadly the truth. I've started to eat vegan, and I've been going for 4 weeks. I'm pretty proud of myself. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you too. Keep at it. It's not difficult. It really forces you to become a good chef. I cook for myself daily and make delicious meals. Eating out just isn't worth it for me. It's never as good, smaller portions, and always way more expensive. I love being vegan and I used to be a super passionate meat eater. Going vegan, seriously. But meat is so delicious, adhabsdhajksdka. Immense call for sustainable tech, and in my opinion, the complete switch to renewable energy will make a huge difference. We can't. Not without abandoning capitalism. We need a significant breakthrough in carbon capture technology. It's too late now to stop emitting carbon before we do heavy damage to the Earth's atmosphere. If we get carbon capture cheap enough, then we can tax pollutions and use the revenue to remove it again. This technology is way off, but hey, the first nuclear reactor only produced half a watt of power. Stopping carbon emissions in the first place is much better. It stops a problem before one is created, but at this point we need anything we can get. Like actually make laws to limit the companies that mass produce plastic. Honestly, IDK what to replace it with, but companies like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and other big plastic producing companies need to have restrictions or some. It's something small, but I have seen at a few grocery stores. Getting discounts for bringing in your own reusable bags. Also, a mom and pop bulk store near me gives you a discount if you bring in your own reusable containers for the bulk products like a mason jar to hold flour. It's super small, I know, but I like the discount. Yay, saving money, and it reduces plastic waste. I think it should be implemented all over the place. It could make a really big difference. Everyone in the world having a day with little to no electricity, reducing the amount of CO2 going into the air. Just a thought, but might work. We can't. The people with the power are too greedy. Might as well stop having kids and enjoy what we have. We are all going to die. A tax on plastic pellets, the source material for plastic items. An equivalent tax on imported plastic items. Pellets, or nurdles as they are often called, are pre-production plastic resin pellets. Essentially raw plastic, before it has been made into an end-use item such as a plastic bag, bottle, or toy. A carbon tax. The only reason people are using coal oil as opposed to nuclear renewable is that they are not paying the practical cost of their CO2 emissions. We know that CO2 has a price impact to our environment. By including that into the price of coal and oil, society can rebalance its priorities. It doesn't matter that the tax is regressive. Change the rest of the tax structure to deal with that. Nothing else will work. Carbon fuels are artificially cheap because they can consume the O2 in the air without paying for it. If we put an appropriate price tag on that, the problem will solve itself. It's that or watch a billion people starve in my lifetime. Stop exempting the animal agriculture industry from environmental regulation, and generally reduce, ideally eliminate, animal product consumption. Killing our egos, and becoming one with the universe nature. What's your definition of save? Every answer totally hinges on it. There's a million ways humans completely alter the ecosystem outside of just global warming that could eventually lead to its demise, given the rate at which humanity is not only growing, but industrializing across the world. The Earth is fine. It will survive. It's the living things on it that won't. Force big companies to find more renewable energy sources. Find a practical and inexpensive way to power everyone's house with solar energy. Get the top polluter countries, like the Philippines, to limit their waste and encourage them to improve their waste disposal system. Stop drinking bottled water and switch to a reusable water bottle with a Brita filter. Truth is, we don't know. The climate is a very complex system and we can't weigh all the factors. Our predictions about climate change vary so wildly it would be impossible to measure the real impact of any interventions we make. Just pick it up and move it someplace else. Patrick Star. Stop emitting fossil fuels as soon as possible and try to control other major sources of greenhouse gases as well as possible. Help vulnerable coastal communities adapt to sea level rise and the threats it brings, like increased flooding during storm surges and even high tides. There are multiple infrastructure strategies that can help with adaptation, such as informed use of seawalls in addition to more natural infrastructure like salt marshes and mangroves. Significantly reduce the size of the human population. Until we can manufacture products that can be 100% recyclable, nothing can reasonably done. We as a species can design wonderful things, make wonderful things, but after that thing reaches its end, we throw it in a hole to rot. The cycle of zero waste has to be thought through and implemented. Recycling is the least effective way to help the environment, though. It's far better to reduce the overall creation of these plastics in the first place and culture more sustainable lifestyles. Physics is unkind towards zero waste. Energy is always conserved. What we can do is minimize the forms we change it between.